Bob Ward is the Policy and Communications Director at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment. That's at the London School of Economics in London. Welcome to the programme. What do you think? Have goals that were set at previous UN summits been empty promises?
Well, they haven't been empty promises. An empty promise implies that you make a promise that you have no intention of keeping. And I think what has been happening is countries have been signing up to promises, but have then not been delivering for one reason and another. And it's clear we haven't done enough, but that's not the same as saying we haven't done anything. Many countries have acted, but we all need to act much more strongly. And the main reason why there's been problems is there's been a misconception that somehow you have to give up economic development and growth in order to tackle environmental problems. And that's completely wrong. But as long as governments have thought that, it has meant that they have been less willing to introduce the kind of strong measures we need to tackle issues like climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution.
And what do you see as the main challenges now facing COP26?
Well, ahead of COP26, every country was supposed to come forward with more ambitious plans to cut emissions. Few countries have done that, and there now needs to be great urgency on all countries now to look at their pledges. When you look at the pledges that have been put forward for emissions cuts by 2030, they are consistent with a world that will warm by nearly 3 degrees by the end of the century, and that would be catastrophic for everyone. It would damage every single country in the world. So all countries now need to stop saying it's somebody else's responsibility to cut. They all need to act. The rich countries have to lead by example, and they have to provide much better support for developing countries who are going to be hit hardest and first by these impacts.
And just very quickly, you're speaking about financing there, for lower income countries and those that will be hit the hardest. Why is there still such an issue with regards to financing?
Well, it clearly is the case that there is a strong argument that the rich countries should be helping and supporting developing countries to cut emissions. Now, even if it wasn't the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do, because those who are most vulnerable to climate change need more help, developed countries should be doing this in their own interest, because we can only stop global warming when we get to zero emissions of greenhouse gases globally. So that means every single country has to cut their emissions. If developed countries do not do their job of helping developing countries to cut their emissions to zero, then the developed countries will also then be dealing with the impacts of climate change. So there is no situation in which it makes sense for us not to be seeking global emissions and for that solidarity. Every rich country, it's in their best interest to cut their own emissions and to help developing countries to cut their emissions as well.
Bob Ward, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be speaking to you a lot in the coming weeks ahead of COP26. Appreciate your time. Thank you.